an important part of this story is what you guys did in 2000.
Yeah, see, I was trying to think of like whenever I first met you, because John started bending my ear about you a lot, probably before we even met in person.
Yeah.
You know, and he was just, oh, you got to meet Topo, you got to meet Topo. He's doing very crazy stuff. And you'd always tell me these crazy stories, like things you uncovered from like talking to people and companies and stuff, and that always got me, excited.
But your dear auditor, though, I think that was brilliant, right?
Yeah, the idea was that the reason that I really loved the idea that he came up with.
Yeah.
It was a brilliant idea. And here is why. So after that unlikely union of DevOps and audit paper that we wrote, I took that idea, which is a set of learning points, right, back to Capital One, and I tried to talk to the auditors that, hey, here's a way that you can actually do segregation of duties. Here is a way that you can actually mitigate risks in your whatever you're doing in your code or your dependency and all that. So that's the core of the paper that was published. The auditor said that it looks fine, but there is no proof that anybody else is doing this. That's number one, because financial companies do not want to be the first one to do something crazy, right? That's kind of given. And then the second point is, I learned that there are two sets of auditors. One is internal auditor and then one is external auditor. Even though we can speak to the internal auditors, I, as a DevOps engineer or architect or whatever my role is, I had no access to the external auditors. I did not even know how to even, where they are, who they are, and how to reach them. And then the realization was that even I could influence the internal auditors, which are my company employees, even though they are seniors and I can convince them, there's no way for me to convince the external auditor. And if I don't, then the whole thing falls apart. So then we realized that we actually haven't ever spoken with auditors in terms of this love thing, right? Hey, we love you, please help. So that was the main thing that came out of that love letter. That was a brilliant idea.
I don't know if it was brilliant or just crazy or just trying to get something done, but we had those conversations and there's other conversations going on at the time. And I remember that for your point on external auditors, I started like quizzing anybody I knew who was in audit or in external audit. I don't know if y'all know, but I was in college, I thought I was going to get out of college and go be an auditor. And then this person, it was like kind of, I was going to like the ISACA meetings and stuff like that. And she was like, I don't know. I don't think this you should take that engineering job. And I was like, I was like, I got this engineering job, but I really want to go audit. And she's like, yeah, I think you should do that. So I went to engineering. But but I always had a soft spot for it because I was like that kid in, this one student who was always going to the ISACA meetings and paying my, student fee to get the lunch or whatever. But so I started asking, people I knew that were auditors, and they were like, yeah, separations of duties, like it doesn't, like that's a myth. Like, but it only depended on like the type of auditor they were. Like if they worked with small companies a lot, they were like, no, it's like just roles, and they would explain to me how they would get around that. And I was like, oh, so like it's just because you're like at a large company, you can have like these other set of rules, but it's the same standard that you're booking to. And we talked about that. I can't remember everything. It's been a while, so I can't remember it.
But yeah, I want to go
it's crazy.
To a little bit of what Tobo said about how IGEA came out.
Yeah.
And I asked him, did you involve the auditors in building this thing? And he said no. And part of the Dear Auditor letter, Dear Auditor, we forgot to bring you along for the ride. When DevSecOps was becoming a thing, the DevOps community was like, hey, security, we need you to come along for this ride. We need you to be part of this tribe. We want you to be part of the conversation, but the auditor conversation.
Yeah, I want to start interject because there's a critical part to that became the history that led us to the reference architecture, which is, it was only about a page and a half of a letter. Mm-hmm. And there was another 15 pages of the risk control matrix. Yeah. And one of the lines in the risk control matrix was literally, I forget, it was like ensuring that developers could create evidence for risk. And it was a promise. Like we promised in the letter, hey, we're sorry, but here's what we're going to do. And it was incredibly comprehensive.
That is very critical because if you think about the reasoning behind the segregation of duties, is just simple thing. No single developer or no single person can change some code and send it to production without anyone else's knowledge. It's a very simple statement. But to prove that, you have to go through a lot of systemic control. to make sure that that does not happen. And that's the control metric.
Yeah, right.